The boy opened his eyes, and the first thing he saw was light. It was not the warm light of Earth, not the sun he remembered, but a cold golden glow that filled the air around him. He tried to move, but heavy chains were locked around his wrists and ankles, clinking when he shifted even a little. His heart raced, his breath sharp, because he realized this was not his home, not his world. The place around him was a hall, a throne room of shining crystal walls, tall pillars carved with strange, glowing marks. Alien guards stood in rows, their eyes like burning coals, their tall armor plates shining under the golden light. He felt like a small animal trapped in a cage, all eyes watching, waiting for something, and then she entered. The Alien Empress, taller than any human woman, her skin silver blue like polished metal, her eyes burning gold like stars. She walked, slowly, every step echoing in the hall, and the guards bowed low as she passed. She wore a crown shaped like wings, and her long robe shimmered with colors that no human eye could name. The boy froze as her gaze fell on him. She lifted one hand, pointing directly at him, and spoke in a sharp, flowing language that cut through the silence like a blade. The guards yanked his chains, dragging him forward until he fell on his knees before her throne. The Empress leaned down, her lips curling in a strange smile. She spoke again, the words clear, powerful, and filled with pride. The boy understood every single word. She said, "This human will be mine, a pet for the Empress of the Golden Empire." But he did not move, did not speak. He forced himself to keep his face empty, his eyes dull, pretending he did not understand, because if she knew he could hear, her, if she knew he could understand, he would not live long. The Empress continued speaking, not to him, but to her guards. "He is weak, but he will amuse me," she said with a laugh, her voice like fire and thunder. "Bring him food, dress him in the clothes of pets, keep him near my throne. He will be a small toy in my court, nothing more." The boy's hands clenched, but he stayed silent. Inside his mind, fear and anger burned together. She thought he was only an animal. She thought he was harmless. She thought he was nothing, but he understood every word, every plan, every cruel laugh. He heard it all. The Empress waved her hand, and the guards forced him to sit on the cold steps of her throne. From there, he could see the entire hall, the nobles and warriors of the Alien Empire whispering, pointing, laughing at the sight of a human chained like a pet. He lowered his head, but his ears stayed sharp, listening to every voice, every secret, spoken in the alien tongue. And then something strange happened. The Empress leaned closer to her advisors, not caring that the pet was near. Her golden eyes narrowed, her voice lowered. She spoke of war, of danger, of shadows in the Empire. "The rebels grow stronger," she whispered. "They move even inside this palace, waiting for the moment to strike. If I fall, the Empire burns." The boy's heart thumped hard. He had not expected this. He was not just a pet in her hall. He was sitting in the middle of secrets, secrets that could change everything. The Empress rose again, tall and shining. She laughed before her court, pretending to be strong, pretending to be unshaken. But the boy knew the truth now. Behind her golden eyes, behind her cruel smile, the Empress was afraid. The guards pulled his chains once more, dragging him to a small place beside the throne. There, he was forced to sit like a dog, like a creature, but his mind was not broken. His silence was his weapon. Every moment he pretended to be a pet. He gathered knowledge. Every word they spoke became a secret he stored inside. The hall echoed with alien music, the nobles cheered, and the Empress raised her hands in victory. But only the boy knew what her whisper had revealed. Only he knew the truth, that even the Empress feared what was coming. And now he had a choice. He could stay silent forever, or one day use this knowledge against her. He lowered his head, chains clinking softly. The court saw only a helpless human, a pet of their Empress, but deep inside he smiled, because he understood everything, and the Empress had no idea. The golden throne room roared with laughter and voices, but for him, it was silent. silent except for the heavy beat of his own heart and the sharp memory of the Empress's words. He knew this was only the beginning, and he knew that very soon, silence itself could be more powerful than any weapon. The boy sat on the cold steps beside the throne, his chains still tight around his wrists. The alien court bustled with sound, voices rising like a storm, laughter echoing across the golden hall. They looked at him as if he was nothing, a small animal, a decoration for their empress. But he listened, always listening, because their voices carried secrets, and secrets were power. The empress sat high above on her shining throne, her golden eyes scanning the crowd like a hawk. She spoke often, her voice filled with command, and each word was followed instantly by her soldiers. To the aliens, her words were orders. To the boy, her words were keys to understanding her empire, her fears, and her plans, and still, she believed he was deaf to her tongue. Day after day, the Empress treated him as her pet. She ordered her servants to feed him strange, glowing fruits, to dress him in fine but humiliating clothes meant for pets of the court. He was kept close to her throne, chained but always in sight. The nobles laughed at this sight, saying the Empress was proud to own a creature from a far and weak world. The boy kept his head low, his face blank, but his mind was sharp as a blade. He noticed how the Empress used him not only as a pet but as a symbol. Whenever an ambassador or rival noble entered the hall, she pointed at the human, calling him her trophy, proof of her empire's reach across the stars. They believed her. They bowed. They smiled in fear. But the boy understood the truth. Behind her performance every time she showed him off, her words carried a hidden message to her enemies. I control even the smallest of worlds. Do not test me. Yet the boy also heard her whispers in the quiet hours of the night. When the hall was empty and only guards remained, the Empress lowered her voice, speaking to her closest generals. She spoke of her enemies growing stronger. She spoke of shadows moving inside her empire, of generals who might betray her. She spoke of a danger so close she could feel it breathing against her throne. The boy never moved, never reacted, but inside his mind he repeated every word, storing it like treasure. One evening, a group of nobles approached the throne with gifts of gold and weapons. They bowed deeply, but their smiles were too sharp, their eyes too cold. The Empress did not notice, but the boy did. He heard their whispers, their secret promises, spoken just low enough that they thought no one could understand. They spoke of rebellion, of waiting for the right moment, of using the Empress's pride against her. The boy's heart pounded, but he kept his face empty, still pretending to be nothing more than a pet. The Empress laughed that night, raising her jeweled cup high, but the boy saw it. Behind her laugh, a flicker of doubt, a shadow in her eyes, and he realized something important. The Empress ruled with fire and fear, but she was surrounded by traitors. Her empire looked strong, but inside it was crumbling. The days passed, and the boy learned more than he ever expected. He learned the names of generals who plotted against her. He learned of planets ready to rise in rebellion. He learned of assassins waiting for a single chance to strike. Every word, every whisper, every careless sentence spoken in front of him was a secret weapon, hidden inside his mind. But danger grew close. One night, as the Empress sat alone on her throne, speaking to herself in her golden tongue, the boy almost forgot to hide his reaction. She said, "If they strike me down, the empire burns. Perhaps even I cannot stop them." The boy's eyes flickered just for a second, but a guard saw it. The alien soldier's face hardened, his sharp eyes narrowing. He leaned close to another guard and muttered something, both staring at the boy suspiciously. The Empress noticed the exchange and frowned. She turned her golden gaze on her pet, studying him with new interest, her lips curved in a slow, cold smile. And then she spoke loudly to her court. "My pet is strange. Perhaps he is smarter than he looks. Tomorrow I will test him." The boy froze inside. He had survived so far by silence, by pretending to be dumb. But now, the Empress herself was beginning to doubt. Tomorrow, she would test him. And if he failed, to convince her if even one word slipped, his secret would be revealed and his life would end. The throne room echoed with cruel laughter as the Empress dismissed her court for the night. But the boy could not sleep, not with the knowledge that tomorrow might be his last chance to remain hidden. The chains felt heavier, the hall colder, the golden walls like a cage closing in on him. He lowered his head, his face blank. But inside, his mind raced with one thought: how will I survive her test? The boy did not sleep that night. He lay on the cold floor beside the Empress's golden throne, his chains tight, his eyes half closed, but his mind sharp and awake. Every word she had spoken before echoed in his head. Tomorrow she would test him. Tomorrow she would look closer, and if she saw even a hint of truth that he understood her language, his life would end. The next morning the great hall filled again with nobles and soldiers. The Empress entered in all her glory, her crown shining, her robe flowing like fire. Her golden eyes swept across the court, and finally landed on her human pet. She raised one hand and ordered him to sit closer to her throne right beside her. The chains rattled as the guards dragged him forward, placing him at her feet like a loyal animal. The Empress began to speak, her voice calm but sharp. She spoke of battle plans, of secret fleets moving across the stars, of traitors hidden inside her empire. Every word was clear to the boy, but he forced his face to remain blank. He pretended to stare at the floor, as if the alien tongue was only meaningless sound to his ears. The Empress leaned back, watching him closely. Her generals stood nearby, whispering among themselves. One general with a scar across his cheek gave a cruel smile. "Perhaps the creature understands," he said softly in their language. "Perhaps. We should test him with fire or blade." The boy's heart pounded, but he did not move. The Empress only raised her hand, silencing the general. "Patience," she said. "I will know the truth soon." For hours the Empress continued her meeting, speaking freely. She believed no human could ever learn her ancient language, but the boy caught every detail, every whisper of rebellion, every hidden plan. He learned that two of her generals planned to strike against her soon. He learned that one of her trusted advisors secretly passed messages to the rebels. He learned that her empire was shaking and she was fighting to hold it together. The boy kept silent, but inside his fear turned into something new. A burning question pressed inside his chest. Should he keep these secrets hidden, or should he one day use them? For the first time since his capture, he realized he had power, dangerous power. That night the hall emptied and the Empress sat alone on her throne. The boy was chained nearby, silent as always. But the Empress did not laugh, did not boast. Instead, she whispered softly to herself, her voice low, her words filled with doubt. "They will betray me. Even here in this palace, knives wait in the dark." She rested her hand on her crown, her golden eyes dim. "If I fall, the empire burns and no one will remember my name." The boy listened, every word striking deep into his mind. This was not the cruel Empress the court saw. This was a woman afraid of the shadows around her. This was the truth hidden beneath her golden mask. He almost moved, almost lifted his head to speak, but he stopped himself. One word, one mistake, and his secret would be gone forever. Instead, he lowered his eyes again, pretending to be nothing, pretending to be her pet, but inside his heart was beating with fire. The next day, the Empress called for him again. This time she ordered food to be placed before him. Strange glowing meat, fruits and drink. She watched closely as he ate, her eyes narrowing. The boy ate slowly, calmly, but he felt her gaze like a knife pressing against his skin. Was this part of the test? Was she waiting for him to react to her words? Then it happened. The scarred general stepped forward, bowing low to the Empress, but his voice was sharp as he spoke. "Great Empress, forgive my boldness, but this creature is dangerous. I saw his eyes yesterday. He listens too closely. He is not what he seems." The hall went silent. The Empress's golden eyes turned to the boy, burning like fire. She studied him for a long moment, her lips curling in a slow smile. "Perhaps you are right," she said softly. "Perhaps this pet has more inside him than we know." The boy forced himself to remain still, but the air grew heavy, every noble's gaze burning into him. He knew if he made one mistake now, one wrong movement, the Empress would order his death, and then the Empress spoke again, her words soft but filled with danger. "Tomorrow I will test him in my own way. If he is only a pet, he will live. If he is more than that. She paused, her smile turning sharp. Then I will break him myself. The court laughed. The music rose, and the Empress lifted her cup in victory. But the boy's heart raced. The Empress no longer saw him as harmless. The generals no longer saw him as dumb. And tomorrow, his greatest secret would stand on the edge of discovery. He lowered his head again, but inside his mind he repeated one desperate thought. How can I keep my secret safe when every eye in this empire is now watching me? The Golden Palace was silent that night. The boy lay chained on the cold floor, but sleep would not come. The words of the Empress rang in his mind. Tomorrow I will test him. He knew what that meant. If he showed even the smallest sign of understanding, his secret would be exposed, and his life would end. At dawn, the guards came, their boots striking the marble floor. They dragged him to the throne room, their grip harsh, their eyes cold. The boy stayed limp in their arms, forcing himself to look weak, harmless, the grand. Doors opened, and the Empress waited inside, seated upon her shining throne, her crown glowing in the golden light. The nobles filled the hall, whispering like snakes. They had come not for politics, not for war, but for a show. Today the Empress would test her pet, and everyone wanted to see if he was truly just a human animal, or something far more dangerous. The boy was forced to kneel before her. The Empress leaned forward, her golden eyes burning into his, her lips curved into a smile, cold and sharp. "My pet," she said in her alien tongue. "Today we will play a little game." The court laughed, thinking it was only entertainment, but the boy understood every word, and his heart pounded like thunder. The Empress gave a signal, and a tray was brought forward. On it lay strange glowing objects, jewels, weapons, fruits, and scrolls. She pointed at them one by one, speaking their names in her language. Star crystal. She said, her voice loud. Warblade, she continued. Fruit of light. The boy kept his head bowed, eyes half closed, pretending he heard only noise, but inside his mind repeated each word, holding them like a knife he dared not use. The Empress's gaze never left his face. She wanted to see a reaction, a flicker, any sign that he understood. But he remained still, his breathing calm, his body unmoving. Around him, the nobles whispered louder. Some laughed, saying he was nothing but an animal. Others frowned, saying he was too calm, too silent. Then the Empress raised her hand, and the hall went quiet. She leaned closer, her golden eyes narrowing. Tell me, little creature, she whispered in her language, are you truly as dumb as you seem? The boy's heart nearly stopped. For one terrible moment he wanted to answer, to shout that he understood, to throw the truth in her face. But he bit down on his tongue, forcing silence. He kept his eyes dull, his face empty. The Empress studied him for a long moment, then laughed. Very well, she said loudly to her court. Perhaps my pet is not clever after all. The hall erupted in laughter, but the boy could hear the doubt still in her voice. She was not finished with him, not. Yet the scarred general stepped forward, his smile cruel. Great Empress, he said, let me test the creature with fire. If he understands nothing, he will not fear the flame. The nobles cheered at this, their eyes hungry for blood. The Empress raised her hand, considering. Then slowly she nodded. The guards brought a small brazier, flames dancing inside. One soldier pulled a metal rod from the fire, its tip glowing red. The boy's chest tightened, sweat forming on his brow. If he showed fear, they would know. If he showed nothing, they might still burn him. The soldier raised the rod, bringing it close to his skin. The boy clenched his jaw, forcing his body not to flinch. The heat bit into his arm. The smell of burning flesh filled the air. He wanted to scream, but he swallowed it, letting only a small grunt escape. The court roared with laughter. See? One noble shouted, he feels pain but knows nothing else. He is just a beast. The Empress leaned back on her throne, her golden eyes thoughtful. She waved her hand, and the soldier pulled the rod away. The boy's arm burned with pain, but he kept his face blank. The Empress tilted her head, her lips curving into a strange smile. Perhaps you are only a pet, she said softly. But perhaps not. I will watch you closer. The hall filled again with noise, music, and laughter. The boy sat in silence, his skin burning, his mind racing. He had survived the test, but only barely, and he knew now the Empress did not trust him. She would watch. Every movement, every breath. One mistake would be enough to reveal his secret. As the court celebrated, the scarred general leaned toward another. The boy caught his whisper. He is dangerous. If the Empress will not kill him, perhaps we should. The boy's blood turned cold. It was not only the Empress who doubted him. The generals now saw him as a threat. He lowered his head again, hiding his eyes. But inside, one thought burned brighter than the pain in his arm. I must stay alive. I must use their secrets before they use me. The golden hall roared with sound, but the boy felt only silence. And in that silence, he knew the game had changed. He was no longer just pretending to be a pet. He was walking on the edge of discovery, and one wrong step would send him into the fire for real. The boy's arm still burned from the iron. Every step he took echoed with pain. Every breath reminded him of the test. But he was alive. He had fooled the Empress, at least for now, and though the generals whispered of killing him, the Empress had stopped them. Days passed in the Golden Palace. The boy sat close to the throne, always chained, always watched. The nobles laughed when they looked at him, calling him nothing more than an animal. But sometimes, when the court grew quiet, the Empress's eyes lingered on him longer than before. There was doubt in her gaze, but also something else, something harder to name. One evening, the throne room emptied. The music died. The nobles left. The guards moved back to their posts. Only the Empress remained on her throne, her crown resting heavy on her head. She looked tired, her golden eyes dim, and then, to his surprise, she spoke. Not to her generals, not to her court, but to herself. Her voice was soft, trembling. I am surrounded by liars. They smile at me by day, but by night they sharpen knives. She lowered her head, her long hair falling like dark water. I trust no one, not even my own blood, perhaps not even myself. The boy listened in silence, his heart beating faster. This was not the proud Empress who ordered fleets and armies. This was not the cruel ruler who burned planets to ash. This was a lonely woman. Afraid of losing everything, for the first time he felt something strange, pity. The Empress looked at him suddenly, her golden eyes sharp again. He quickly lowered his gaze, pretending to be nothing more than a dumb creature. But her stare lingered, heavy, searching. At last she gave a small laugh, bitter and cold. Sometimes, she whispered, I wish someone understood me. But no one does. The boy's throat tightened. He wanted to speak, to tell her he understood every word, but he stayed silent, because silence was still his only shield. The next day, the Empress did something strange. Instead of leaving him chained at her feet, she ordered him to follow her. The guards dragged him through shining halls, past gardens filled with glowing plants and fountains that sang like music. At the center of the garden, she stopped. The air smelled sweet, the light softer than in the throne room. She turned to the boy, her crown gone, her robe replaced with a simple gown. She looked less like a ruler and more like a woman. She spoke again in her language, her voice calm. This is the only place I find peace, she said. She sat by the fountain, her reflection rippling in the water. Then she looked at him, her golden eyes softer than he had ever seen. You are quiet, she whispered. Perhaps that is why I keep you. Everyone else speaks lies, but you say nothing. And in silence there is truth. The boy froze. Did she suspect? Or was she simply speaking to the silence she thought he carried? He stayed still, his face empty. But inside, her words struck deep. She trusted him, at least a little, not because she thought him clever, but because she thought him harmless. That night she ordered softer clothes for him, no longer the humiliating rags of a pet. She gave him food from her own table, strange meat and glowing bread. The court laughed when they saw it, but she silenced them with one look. The boy understood now. Something was changing. The Empress was drawing him closer, but closer meant danger. The more time he spent near her, the harder it became to hide the truth. One wrong glance, one wrong movement, and his secret would shatter. And yet, part of him wanted to stay close. Part of him wanted to see more of the woman hidden behind the crown. One night the boy sat beside her throne while she whispered to her generals. Her voice was sharp, her eyes cold. But he noticed her hand trembling against the armrest. He realized she was afraid of the rebellion, afraid of betrayal, afraid of losing everything, and then she did something no one expected. She reached down, her golden hand brushing lightly against his shoulder. Her touch was not cruel, not harsh, but almost gentle. The hall gasped in shock, but the Empress ignored them. The boy's chest tightened. This was no longer just a game of survival. This was something far more dangerous. The Empress, ruler of the Golden Empire, was beginning to trust him, and trust was sharper than any blade. That night, as he lay in the dark corner of her chamber, chained but alive, he thought of her words. Sometimes I wish someone understood me, and for the first time he wondered, was he still only pretending? Or was he beginning to care for the woman who believed him nothing more than a pet? The Golden Palace seemed quieter than ever, but in that silence, he felt the weight of something new, a bond, fragile and hidden, forming between him and the most powerful and most dangerous woman in the galaxy. He closed his eyes, but sleep would not come because deep inside, he knew bonds could save lives. But they could also destroy them. The Palace of Gold stood tall that night, but inside shadows were moving. The boy sat near the Empress's throne, chained but watchful. He had learned much since his capture. He had seen the pride of the Empress, the cruelty of her generals, the whispers of rebellion, and now he felt it. Something was about to break. The air was heavy, thicker than before. Guards marched nervously, their hands tight on their weapons. Nobles whispered louder than usual, their eyes sharp and restless. The Empress herself sat rigid on her throne, her golden eyes glowing but troubled. She could sense the storm as well. That evening, the court gathered for a great feast. The Empress raised her jeweled cup, laughing as music filled the hall. But her smile was tight, her laughter thin. The boy knew why. She no longer trusted her court. She no longer trusted anyone. Then it happened. The doors of the throne room burst open. A group of armed rebels stormed inside, their faces hidden, their weapons glowing with deadly light. The music died, the nobles screamed, guards rushed forward, the golden hall became chaos. The boy froze, his chains rattling as he pulled back against the wall. The Empress stood tall, her crown shining in the firelight. She shouted orders in her alien tongue, her voice a roar of power. The guards clashed with the rebels, steel against fire, screams filling the air. The boy watched every detail, his heart pounding. He saw one rebel aiming a weapon directly at the Empress. Time slowed. No one else noticed, but he did. Without thinking, he moved. He lunged forward, throwing himself between the Empress and the weapon. The blast struck the wall instead, burning stone and filling the air with smoke. The Empress's eyes widened. For the first time, she looked at her pet not as an animal, but as something more. But she had no time to speak. The rebels surged forward. The guards fought harder. Blood stained the golden floor. The boy fell back, smoke in his lungs, chains heavy around him. He could not fight, not with his hands bound, but he could still watch, still listen. And what he heard froze his blood. One rebel shouted to another, "Now! Kill the Empress while the court burns." He understood the words, he understood the plan, and yet he could do nothing. He bit his tongue, forcing himself silent. If he spoke now, his secret would be revealed. But if he stayed silent, the Empress would die. The rebels pushed closer. The Empress fought like fire, her golden sword flashing, but she was outnumbered. Her crown slipped from her head, her robe torn, her breath heavy. For the first time, she looked small. For the first time, she looked mortal. The boy's chest tightened. He remembered her words in the garden. Sometimes I wish someone understood me. And now he was the only one who did, the only one who could save her. A rebel raised his blade, running straight for her back. The boy's body moved before his mind could stop it. He shouted, a word in her own language, "Behind you." The sound cut through the chaos, sharp and clear. The Empress spun, her sword flashing. She struck the rebel down before the blade touched her. The hall froze, silence falling for a heartbeat. Every noble, every guard, every general turned to stare at the boy, their eyes wide with shock. Their human pet had spoken, and not just spoken. He had spoken their tongue perfectly. The Empress's golden eyes locked on him. Her chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, her sword dripping with blood. Her voice was low, almost trembling. "You understood me all this time?" The boy's heart raced. He could not hide anymore. The secret was out. He had saved her life, but in doing so, he had broken the silence that kept him safe. The rebels lay dead or captured. The guards stood victorious, but the court's eyes did not leave him. Whispers filled the air like knives. The Empress stepped closer, her shadow falling over him. Her voice was soft, but her words carried the weight of thunder. "You are no pet," she whispered. "You are something else, something dangerous." The boy lowered his head, chains clinking softly. He had crossed the line. There was no turning back, and now, the fate of both the Empress and himself balanced on the edge of her choice. The golden hall was silent. Every eye waited for the Empress's command. Would she kill him for his deception or protect him for his loyalty? The boy's heart pounded. The bond between them had been revealed in fire and blood, but bonds could break as quickly as they formed. And in that silence, one truth remained clear. Nothing would ever be the same again. The throne room was silent. The fires from the battle still burned in the corners, smoke curling into the golden air. The dead lay where they had fallen, rebels and guards alike, their blood staining the shining floor. But no one looked at the bodies. Every eye was fixed on the boy. The Empress stood above him, her golden sword dripping, her crown crooked on her head. Her breath was heavy, her golden eyes sharp as fire. Moments ago he had saved her life. Moments ago he had spoken her language perfectly, and now the secret he had guarded for so long was gone. Whispers spread through the hall like poison. "He understands." The human spoke. "Impossible." The generals looked at him with suspicion, the nobles with fear. The Empress raised her hand, and silence returned at once. She stepped closer, her shadow falling over him. Her voice was calm, but every word struck like steel. "How long?" she asked. "How long have you understood me?" The boy lifted his head slowly, his eyes meeting hers, his chains rattled, his throat dry, but at last he spoke. "From the first day," he said softly. Gasps filled the court, the sound sharp and loud. The Empress's gaze did not waver. Her eyes burned brighter, but her lips curved into something strange. Not anger, not yet, but something more dangerous. "You listened," she said, her voice low. "You listened to everything, every word I spoke, every secret I kept." Her tone was filled with awe, but also with fear. "My pet was never a pet. He was a spy in chains." The generals stepped forward, their hands on their blades. "Kill him," one shouted. "He is a danger to the Empire. End him before he strikes again." The nobles echoed, their voices rising in agreement. But the Empress raised her hand, silencing them all. She looked at the boy again, her eyes searching. "And yet," she whispered, "you saved me. You spoke not to betray me, but to warn me." "Why?" The hall waited, holding its breath. The boy's voice was quiet but steady. "Because I chose to," he said. "Because I did not want you to die." The words struck the court like thunder. The generals shouted again, calling him a liar, a trickster. But the Empress raised her hand once more. Her golden eyes softened for a brief moment. She remembered her own words, whispered in the garden. "Sometimes, I wish someone understood me." And now she realized, someone did. The hall trembled with tension. The generals wanted his death. The nobles wanted his blood. But the Empress stood silent, caught between two choices: to kill him and prove her strength, or to protect him and risk everything. At last she turned, her voice loud and sharp. "Enough," she roared. The hall fell silent again, every noble bowing, every general lowering his head. She raised her sword, pointing it not at the boy but at her court. "This human has saved my life. He has proven loyalty greater than any of you." Her words shocked them all. "You call him a beast, a spy, but none of you stood between me and death." "He did," The generals looked uneasy. The nobles shifted nervously. The Empress lowered her sword and looked at the boy again. Her golden eyes burned, but her voice was softer, almost careful. "Perhaps you were never my pet," she said. "Perhaps you are my only ally." The boy's chest tightened. For so long he had hidden, survived by silence. Now his truth stood in the open. The Empress did not kill him, not yet. Instead, she offered him something far stranger. The hall buzzed again with whispers. Some called her foolish, others called her weak. But the Empress silenced them with a single look. She turned back to the boy. "Your life is mine," she said firmly. "But no longer. As a pet. From this day you will walk beside me, chained not by iron but by choice. You will serve the throne as more than an animal." The boy felt the weight of her words. She was giving him power but also danger. To stand beside her was to stand in fire. Every general, every noble would hate him, but to refuse was death. And deep inside he knew this was the path he was meant to walk. Slowly, he bowed his head, not as a pet, not as a slave, but as someone who understood her. The golden hall roared with voices, but the Empress smiled. It was not the smile of victory, not the smile of cruelty. It was the smile of someone who had found at last a single thread of trust in a world of betrayal. The chains rattled softly as the guards stepped back. The boy stood taller, his place beside the throne no longer as a prisoner, but as something far more dangerous. The Empress leaned close, her whisper soft enough for only him to hear. "Do not betray me. If you do, I will burn your world to ash." Her eyes gleamed, sharp as fire, but her words held something else. Fear, maybe even hope. The boy nodded slowly. He had begun this journey as a captive, a pet, but now he stood as the one person who knew. The truth behind the Empress's mask, the bond between them was fragile, sharp as glass. But it was real, and as the golden hall roared with sound, the boy knew one thing clearly. This was not the end of his story. This was only the beginning.